Absolutely, yeah.
All right, Dave, how are you?
I'm good, Charlie. I'm well. I'm well today.
Welcome to Unfiltered Lives, the other side.
Thank you for coming down and, driving down to see me and allowing me this opportunity to tell my story.
When we got the message from your brother, Will, and just to introduce you, you're Will's brother, aren't you, Will, who we recorded about 6 weeks back. We got a message from Will saying that you would like to appear on Unfiltered Lives, and we were thrilled, absolutely thrilled at that.
Yeah, I am Will's brother, so I've been told.
You're definitely Will's brother.
Yeah, so I've been told. I watched his interview, and it was very interesting, Charlie. It was, I learned some stuff that I never knew before.
Can I just ask you what you learned from
So I learned to take from his perspective. Mm-hmm. We've had the brief conversation of me and my brother. We've got parallel lives. There's one set of footprints in the sand, so to speak. But how he experienced it is very different to how I experienced it. It was good to see him being, speaking with candor about how it affected him, because we don't speak about that very often. We try and keep recovery out of it, and we don't very often speak about our childhood experiences, our experiences together in addiction, the codependency that we've had. So it's nice to hear more in depth of his take and his experience and how that has impacted him through life. Because I see it from my perspective, don't I? I see it from my experience, and doesn't necessarily make my experience right or wrong or more profound or anything like that. It's just how I experienced it. So it's nice to see his take on things and his understanding of basically a same blueprint of life. And up until 7.5 years ago, when I went off to rehab, where our lives very dramatically changed. And the first time in our lives we parted ways, you know what I mean? So
we found the interview incredibly inspiring, but incredibly raw, especially towards the end. We had to, when we were driving back, we had to take quite a considerable time in the car just to process the interview that took place. And credit to Will, he peeled back some layers. And on the way back home in the car, we were like, what just happened there?
No, I agree. He's done a lot of work on himself. He's got a lot of awareness, and I know he actively works on himself. He actively looks at things that he needs to change, actively looks at his trauma. And it was nice to see the very end bit. I can't remember exactly how it went, but what message would you give yourself today? And he hit that emotion. Mm-hmm. It's like, fair play. Yeah. Fair play, because as a man and our upbringing, we weren't given permission. We were not given permission to, as males, to show that stuff, and it's very much the messages that I was passed. I remember as a kid, I'd only been 11 or 12, and we were living in Germany, and I got stung by a wasp nest. Okay, now I got stung a lot, and so I was crying, I was screaming. Had to get over like a security fence because we lived on an army camp. And then because I'm screaming, my dad, and I don't want to speak ill of my dad because he's a great man. I need to throw that one out, play devil's advocate. And all I got was, what you crying like a little girl for? Yeah. So in that moment, it's like, I'm not allowed this. I'm not allowed to show these feelings, these emotions. And, I was taught from a young age on, and I mean young, little kid, that it's not safe to do that. It's not safe to show that, and that has played out in my life. That made me weak, made me vulnerable. People are going to use that against me.
Because that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about the vulnerability, isn't it? And we're talking about how Will stripped back at his last interview and showed the vulnerability for the world to see. And I actually think it was awe-inspiring, because it used to be the ethos that never show your vulnerabilities. You have rightly said it was never show my weakness. But I'm a strong believer that the vulnerability, showing my vulnerability, is our strength. I don't know if you agree with that.
I totally concur with that, Charlie. Like, it's beautiful to see, because as a male, it gives me permission. Shows me. I know that if I hadn't seen other males in recovery get vulnerable, get emotional, and be protected within that, and no bad come from that, I would never have got there myself, you know, and I'd still be carrying all this stuff myself and trying to deal with my trauma, all that stuff. So it's beautiful to see my brother do that and get to that place of touching with those emotions and being in touch with those emotions and knowing it's okay to show that.
Let's get to know Dave.
Yes, enough about Will.
Let's talk about the parallel lives that you and Will lived, and let's get to know Dave. Let's start off start from your childhood. What were you like, man, as a child? What were you like, man, growing up?
So, our parallel lives, from as young as I can remember, right? Everything would be okay, right? As long as Will was there, you know what I mean? I remember being at school in Gibraltar and being taken for the school photo and me kicking off on one of my brother. I couldn't speak at this point, right? And to calm me down, they brought my brother in. It was just a sense of security, you know what I mean? It was okay. It was okay. He was there, you know. He was there, and that codependency followed us all the way through. We were always together, always together. We were always up to no good. We were, you know. I remember like living in Colchester, and I was only young, and we were exploring this big estate, and we got lost. And I remember that fear of being lost as a kid, right? But I also remember the comforting nature of knowing my older brother was there. You know what I mean? And that brought me solace. That brought me safety. It brought me security. I knew it'd be okay. I knew we'd get home. You know what I mean? I knew nothing would happen, right? And then he went off to boarding school when I was 5. Okay, and I can still remember the feeling of like, I haven't got my older brother, and I just wanted to be with my brother. You know what I mean? So then I went off to boarding school. Well, I tried to get into boarding school the first time and I failed. You know, I'm dyslexic and I was never taught, so I failed massively. And I just longed to be with him. So I eventually got in and I was back with my brother, you know what I mean? I was back full time with my brother. The world was all right again, you know what I mean? The world was all right again. It was safe and it was secure again, you know. And then we moved schools, and I don't carry many regrets, right, Charlie, in life, right? And I know my brother didn't really touch too much on, he touched on what happened with him at boarding school, being ostracized and all that stuff. And I just remember like thinking, so I'm moving from junior house to senior house. And I used to get, I need to say this, I used to get really homesick, right? And I don't know why, because when I went to boarding school, I didn't want to be at home, I didn't want to be at school, but I used to get really homesick. I just wanted my mum, you know, another one. Always been secure with my mum, right? And my brother would come to my window of a night and I'd feel better, you know what I mean? And then I was due to move junior house to senior house, and I just remember being in so much fear and worry and anxiety about potentially it happening to me. Okay, so I said to my mum, listen, I don't want to go into Roberts, I want to go into a different house. And I feel guilty about that. Yeah, I feel guilty about that. there's two things in life I would change, and that's one of them, you know what I mean? If I could have my time again, I'd go into Roberts. That probably love, that probably support, you know what I mean? Yeah. Still carry a bit of guilt about that. Wasn't expecting it to be this emotional.
Why do you think you feel the guilt? Where's the guilt coming from?
Because I guess the guilt comes from he was always there.
Mm-hmm.
He was always there consistently, no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and at a time, and I get I was only young at the time, but I feel like I should have been there. I feel like I should have been that present. You know, I feel like that present should have been reciprocated back to him. You know, and I know it wouldn't have changed his lot much, and it probably would have made my lot worse. The fact is, yeah, that's how I feel. That selfishly, I put my own wants above his.
Well,
and that's okay.
You know, you're a child and growing up wanting your brother, very close relationship with your brother. I think we're first and foremost, we're human beings.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know,
no, I agree.
Let's Emma, walk through school then. Walk me through how your school life was, leaving school. How did you feel in school?
So school, yeah, boarding school fucked me up. I can't say any simpler than that.
Wow,
fucked me up. So some of my first memories are from like 4. So I couldn't speak until I was 5. I went to school before I could speak, and this is where like separation and escapism. I can track this separation, feeling separated from my peers and escaping. So I was at school, a place called St. Christopher's in Gibraltar, and I couldn't speak. You know, I was late speaking because of dyslexia and all that stuff. And I remember such a vivid memory for me being, so if the classroom's orientated that way, Charlie, and the blackboard's down that way, and all the other kids are facing that way, I was sat facing that wall on a two-seated table with another kid. He was always sat to the left, I was always sat to the right. To the right of me was a set of French doors that looked over the Straits of Gibraltar. And I remember thinking, I'm different. Why am I different? Why am I sat here, away from everybody else? And that obviously caused me to feel a certain way, you know. And so I would stare out the window. And I'd be in escapism. I'd be wondering where these ships were going, who's on these ships, what were they, who were they, where were they from, where were they going, what exotic places in the world were they venturing to, you know. And that was my schooling for a few years. That separation followed me, you know. My first boarding school, not so much, but my second boarding school, you know, an all-boys military school, and I just couldn't connect. With people. I would sit in my cubicle in the morning, I'm hearing all these lads like laughing, joking, forming relationships, getting on with people. And I was in so much fear of doing that it was easier and safer to sit in my cubicle with my curtain closed on my own, in isolation, with all these people around me, listening to BBC Radio Kent. Right? And that's what I did. I did that for years, like 5 years near enough. I also felt inferior around academia, but I excelled at sports. So to what I know today, to compensate for that feeling inferior and less than, I lorded it over people because I excelled at sports. I played county cricket until I was 16, played in all the sports teams, you know. So I'd lord it over people. I'd get involved in things I didn't really want to do, because I thought that's what would make me feel a part of and be accepted. You know, I did things that I didn't want to do to feel a part of. I got into massive, you know, I was always in trouble. You know, I was always pushing boundaries, always in trouble. Did very little work towards GCSEs or anything like that. Yeah, schooling wasn't the best. You know, there was a lot of public ridicule as well and humiliation at school, and I really carry that through today.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I really struggled at university with people because
you struggled in the academic side, but you excelled on the sport side, on the athletic sport side.
Yeah.
Did excelling at the sport side, did that make you feel almost better?
Oh yeah, superior.
Because,
yeah, it made me feel superior, made me feel better than, you know.
Academic side doesn't really count because I'm really good at this.
Yeah. But then also the academia side of things, I had a lot of public humiliation, like, and this is really sad for like an 8-9-year-old to go through regularly on a regular basis at my first boarding school, because I couldn't do simple arithmetic because my dyslexia comes out in dyscalculia, so I'm really bad with numbers, you know what I mean?
Did you know back then that you had,
no,
that's what I thought.
I wasn't diagnosed until I was 16 when I sit my GCSEs. And so I would, on a regular basis, I would be made, like, for one instance, I couldn't divide 5 into 20, right? So I was made, 4 into 20, sorry. So what happened was I was made to stand up in front of class. 4 of my peers were got up. They were stood in a line. The maths teacher gave me 20 blocks and he made me walk down the line, giving a block at a time. You know what I mean?
Oh. Is that ridicule and fear, isn't it?
Embarrassment.
Yeah, embarrassment. Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right.
You know, like that feeling of, what's wrong with me? Why is this happening to me? You know,
why me?
Why me? Yeah. Again, made me feel separated. Made me feel like there was something wrong with me. Made me feel like I was going to be ridiculed and embarrassed. And I still have that today. You know, at university, I still have that real trouble to connect with people. Not long ago, I started a master's in psychotherapy, and I remember sitting there.
I've just had to catch my breath here. A master's in psychotherapy for someone who's been diagnosed with dyslexia.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I achieve it, Charlie, you know what I mean?
Sorry for cutting you off there.
No, that's cool. And I achieve it. But I remember, like, sitting there. I got in early and I'll sit, because I was the first one and I was scrolling on my phone. And then all my cohort are coming in and they're all like connecting again, and it puts me straight back into a place where I want to go and involve myself. You know what I mean? But there's that fear of rejection, fear of not being accepted, fear of being shunned, all that stuff. So I separate myself. I pretend to be scrolling on Facebook, but inside, deep inside, I'm just craving for somebody to come, Dave, come on.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But I can't do it for myself, you know. And still, with the tutors, I try and avoid, like, actively presenting any work on like a cohort level, you know, present any of my work, because I have that belief system that you now carry the power of ridicule or affirmation. You know, I give my power away a lot because of this, Charlie, is a truthful answer. Had a massive knock-on effect. And it's really sad that I carry the same stuff at 46 than I did at 7. You know?
It's attached, isn't it? It's attached, isn't it?
Yeah, it's ingrained. It's ingrained. You know what I mean? And I actively try and work on it. You know, so I'll sit with my cohort at lunchtime for as long as I can. And then I'll make my excuses and then go be on my own, you know what I mean?
You're aware of that?
Yeah, I'm totally aware of it.
You're aware of that, so you still have the power, because you are aware. If you're unaware that you're giving away manpower, then you're just seeping it all, aren't you? But you are aware of it, so you have got that awareness. That's what I'm saying. And by having that awareness, well, you will know this in studying my psychotherapy, then you can ultimately work through it.
And that's why why I challenge myself, go and sit with my cohort for, and it only lasts like 20 minutes, half hour, you know, And then the next week I'll try and sit for like 25 minutes, 35 minutes, whatever the case may be. And like connect with those people I connect with and make sure I do that.
Yeah.
You know, because otherwise, ultimately, I'm left on my own. You know, and I've spent enough time on my own. Charlie's a truthful answer.
One of the reasons that I love doing these interviews and finding out about people is because I find out about myself. And what you're speaking about here is I am identifying with a lot of this because I had a terrible stammer when I was younger, which meant I couldn't talk openly as what I wanted to talk. So I would only speak frequently when I could go in and out. So I felt very, very lonely. And it's only been since I went into recovery and into my fellowship, and I was almost forced to speak in the group settings, and the terrified stomach churns that I still get today, actually. But I know that if I let those butterflies in that churn, if I keep letting that churn, and by not speaking, then I need to speak because I need to do the work.
Absolutely.
Because I'm aware of this, and what you're saying, I can identify. So I can identify so much in that loneliness that we attach as a childhood, and you've still got it. You've still got it even someone as a 46-year-old adult. Is incredible, isn't it?
It is, and you know, it's safer to be. It's safer to be on my own, Charlie, is a truthful answer. It's safer to be on my own because people can't reject me. Can't abandon me.
Do you want to be on your own? No, of course we
absolutely
don't.
not.
Of course we don't.
You know, absolutely not. But it's safer to sit in that than what it is to risk being rejected and abandoned and having to go through all those feelings, you know. And I know it's not, you know, I'm aware enough to know it's not like the present situation. It's triggering all my past trauma, you know, which is what I try and actively work on. But just because I work on it doesn't mean it goes anywhere. It still presents at times, you know.
Let's talk about drugs. What was your first ever drug?
My first ever drug. If we're talking illicit drugs, it would have been dope. No, alcohol. It would have been alcohol at boarding school. But if we're talking like behavioural wise, it would have been the brain chemicals that when I got away with naughtiness, you know, what I know today, like, because that made me feel better about myself. But if we're talking illicit addiction wise, it was alcohol at school, you know, going downtown and getting as pissed as I could, really, when I could. But I couldn't do it that often because I played a lot of sports. But the moment I could, I did. You know what I mean? I was getting hammered.
Well, yeah. How old were you when you first got hammered?
14. 14, I want to say. I remember the first time I was ever really drunk was in this house, and I drank a pint of mixed spirits. I remember being locked out the front naked by my brother because I was being a little nose and being sick on the hallway carpet. You know, but it's from the start, it was like such lack of thought of consequences because I thought that's what I wanted to do, I guess, you know. I saw my brother doing it, so he left school. And I used to blame him. I don't blame him anymore. I hold my own accountability today. But he left school, and he said it. He was locked and loaded. He was going to find drugs, and so he left a few weeks before the end of term when he was 16 after his GCSEs. So I would have been 14. By the time I come home that summer holiday, he had found drugs. You know, I saw him smoking weed, drinking. That was okay. If he's doing it, it must be okay, you know. If he's doing it, I want to do it. I want to try a bit of this. And I liked it, Charlie, truthfully. I liked drugs. I liked what they did for me. You know, I like that they took me out of that world of pain that I was in. Took me out of here. You know, it was freeing. It was liberating. I felt accepted. It was a solution.
Mm.
It was a solution to my torment. You know, everything I spoke about, that was my breeding ground for addiction. How I felt about myself, how I couldn't connect with others. Drugs took that away. You know, alcohol took that away. Then I progressed through the natural cycle of drugs, you know, the rave scene, the party drugs. Good times, I ain't gonna lie. I had some really good times. But knocked the back end out of any drug that I ever used. You know, from the minute I started, that was it. I'd found my solution. And every drug I found along the way, that was my solution. And then heroin comes in at 19. Well, I first tried heroin at 17, you know, up at a house just up the road. I know my brother said about it. And then, you know, I went to score a draw one day off somebody and he was selling smack. Good night Vienna from that point.
19.
Really, at 19. So smack just wrapped me up in that cotton wool. There was no more worries, there's no more fears. I didn't have to fear anything. It was my mistress. It became my mistress, it became my lover, it became my worst enemy, it became my best friend, my food, my water, my sustenance. It was everything to me. I quite often say to people that heroin was my first love. And it was. It was.
How could you describe your first love? If you had if you could describe it in a language.
She was safe. She was secure. Interesting that I had the female connotation to it. It was there. You know what I mean? It was always there. It was always there. It was there when I wanted it. It was never leaving me. I guess. I like the way it made me feel. I like the way it made me feel secure. I like the way it made me sick and the euphoria I got after being sick, you know. And that was smoking it. And then I found out I could inject it. And that was even better, even quicker, you know. Got to me the place where I wanted to be a lot quicker. And then I found crack. And that was just the next level of things.
So what age? So at the 19 we started taking heroin. And then how fast did we start to inject heroin?
I smoked it for 9 months, roughly. So then I injected it about 9 months in.
9 months in?
Yeah, when I found out I had a habit about 9 months in. And I started injecting it at the same time.
So we're going into our 20s now.
Yeah.
What age did you find crack?
I would have found crack roughly 20 and a half, something like that. My first experience of crack, I was like, oh, fuck. That's fucking beautiful. That's beautiful.
I don't mean to laugh, but yeah.
And then I found out.
I don't mean to laugh, but it's
yeah,
really good analogy. I don't know anybody has the first one goes, oh, I don't fucking like it. It's fucking beautiful.
Yeah, listen, especially early 2000s. Early 2000s, you know, offered me that all those false promises, you know what I mean? And then I found out I could put crack in a syringe. And then I found out I could do both together, crack and smack, and, you know, then I'll start snowballing it. And that's just like, I'm getting the best of both worlds.
Where were you getting your money from? And where were you staying? So
initially, I was working, you know, I also did various jobs, but when we first started our little journey and escapade with heroin and crack.
Were you, I'm sorry, were you in tow with Will along those lines, or were you just doing it?
No, this is all with Will. All my drug using has been with Will,
right,
apart from little periods along the way, you know, when he's gone off and got clean. Well, I say got clean, but, you know, he's gone off and done his little thing. We were both working at the local psychiatric hospital, even though we're taking loads of pharmaceuticals out of the meds cabinet, which we were, you know, and drinking on top of those. That's where we're working. Then we went to work on the street selling joke books, which was very good money. So up and down the country selling joke books, so we were still funding the habit. Then that stopped. So I then entered a life of crime. You know, there was a lot of shoplifting for me. You know, I supported 2 habits effectively for 10 years through shoplifting. I was out 5-6 times a day, robbing everything from tampons to TVs, whatever was on order. You know, whatever I could get my hands on, it was going out of the shop with me. And I like to kid myself that I enjoyed the shoplifting, and I kind of think that justified what I knew to be bad. But I did used to buzz off it, truthfully. If I knew I was setting the alarms off and I've got a trolley full of whatever, it's excitement, isn't it? And it's a buzz. But yeah, there's a lot of crime, jail sentences along the way. I was thinking about it before you arrived. You know, it's like a lot of drug treatment and testing orders along the way, community service, which I'd never do. Be open about, I'm not doing your community service. A lot of drug treatment testing orders. That never worked. So eventually it was jail sentences for me. You know, 3 jail sentences. I've been lucky, to be fair. I've done 3 little jail sentences. But
none of them were a deterrent.
No, I used all the way through my jail sentences. Truthfully, I wasn't one of these that was looking to get out clean. I'd made my peace way before that this was my life. I'd accepted that I was a junkie and I was going to die a fucking junkie.
So if you can just explain a little bit, because that's quite something that you said there, that the acceptance of you knowing that you were a junkie, a drug addict, and that you were going to die. I mean, that in a way, that's quite a powerful statement.
I guess that's all I knew. You know, I'd conditioned myself to that way of living. Charlie's truthful answer. You know, I conditioned myself to some really abnormal shit. You know, injecting in my groin for 17 years, not being able to stop, having consequences left, right, and centre. DVTs not being able to stop. You know, I remember my second DVT, like this is just an example of my addiction, where it takes me to. My second DVT was from just under my belly here, all the way down my left leg. The whole vein was just one big blood clot. And I was at hospital. My mum was there. I was with I think the consultant was there, and the anticoagulation nurse, who was a friend of my mother. And they're all begging me to go into hospital. But I'd been in hospital previously with my first DVT. And all I could think was, if I go into hospital, I'm not going to be able to use the way that I want to use. You know, this is a level of acceptance that I fucking reached. You know what I mean? I didn't think I was worthy of anything else. Charlie, that's my lot. That's all I was worthy of. I wasn't deserving of a life. You know, it's really sad that somewhere along the way, I picked up, it's okay to treat myself this way. You know, where did I get that from? You know what I mean? Where did I get that from? It's not even mine to carry. These messages that I've been passed, not even mine. You know, that's the worst thing about all of this. A lot of this stuff, it's not even mine. It's what people have done to me or shown me or told me, you know.
And then you've picked up along the way and then carried that burden almost.
Yeah, you know. Where did I allow myself and make it permissible to myself to treat myself like that? Worse than a dog, man. A dog gets to eat. I didn't. I was lucky if I got a bowl of crave a day. You know.
So you're 17 years. You said that you're 17 years of basically treating yourself in that, the way you're shoplifting 5 times a day. If you'd heroin, crack.
Yeah.
Where were you living?
So initially, when we first started using heroin, we were in a shared house. Got kicked out of there. So a lot of it was spent at my brother's. in a hostel until I got my own flat. But the mad thing is that I had my own flat, but I would spend more time on my brother's sofa because I was fucking too scared he was going to use without me. And that wasn't okay. It was okay for me to use without him, but he wasn't allowed to use without me, you know.
He said that. I'm sure he said that when they did.
Yeah, you know, I remember, he'd go out and sell the big issue and I'd be in fucking so much fear of him using without me. But I'd be out shoplifting through the day, you know what I mean? Or I'd be out roofing myself. You know, at 10 years into my addiction, he was one of my fencers. I sold a lot of stolen goods to him, and he owned a roofing company, and he offered me a job, and I thought, well, listen, 50 quid a day is better than being out there and going to jail and all that shit. So I started roofing, and then, you know, I started labouring roofing, and then that wasn't enough then. I wanted to be a roofer. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I became a roofer, a bit better money, and, you know, we weren't lacking for money, me and my brother. We were pulling in not a bad little wage between us. But the only time I'd go back to my flat is times when I'd buy like a back payment from the DWP. You know what I mean? So I had this money in the bank and I'd used with him. I'm like, you know what, fuck this. I'm going to go use myself. You know what I mean? That's the only time I'd go back to my flat. Or if he'd kicked me out because he'd had enough of me. That's the only time I'd go back to my flat. You know, or if the council would come around. Like, my flat was a shithole. It was my little crack house. You know what I mean?
Tell me the first realisation that you thought, I need to get some help.
A story to this one, Charlie.
Yeah, that's fine.
So, like I say, from 19 to 39, I was content with what I had.
Yeah.
That was me. This is my life. Fucking sweet. And then a woman came into my life, a woman called Yvonne. And she came to work at a drop-in centre I used to frequent, right? I only to get a bit of food, wait for somebody to turn their phone on or try and blag a hit. So she was in recovery. And what she did was she would sit with me every few weeks, a week, spend like 10, 15 minutes of time with me. And she would share her experience of addiction, her experience of recovery. Then she started to attack my denial. Basically, where she came to work was death's waiting room. It was. That's such entrenched using. And she saw this, so she started to challenge it. And I was one of those people she started to challenge. I wasn't receptive to it to begin with. You know, I was okay. I could stop tomorrow. I wasn't like these people. You know what I mean? So then she, like I say, started to attack my denial. And this wasn't a quick process. This was like 5-year long process. This
5 years
for me, 5 years. And then what happened was I was sat getting my methadone script one day in recovery in an outside agency, right? That I'd been to I've been on methadone for 18 years at this point, on and off, apart from a few jail sentences where, my first jail sentence I did a methadone rattle. Then after that I was maintained in jail. So I'd been on methadone near enough 17, 18 years, but yeah, roughly. And the best way I can describe it, I'm sat in this appointment. I've got a new key worker, first appointment. I've known her for years, but she's never been my key worker, a lady called Jane, right? And I'm sat in this office. I'm sat like this. She sat to the right of me. And I'm saying the same shit I've been saying for like near enough 15, 18 years, whatever the case is. And it's like I was taken out of the best way I can describe it, it's really weird. I was taken out of my body, right? And I was put on a higher vantage point. And I can see for the first time my situation, my reality, that I was going to die, you know? And then I was put back in my body, right? This is like milliseconds, seconds, whatever. And in that moment, I got put in my body. I just turned around to her and said, Jane, I can't do this anymore. Cannot do this anymore. I hadn't gone with that intention. I hadn't gone with that intention. And in that moment, I was saying to Claire earlier on that from that moment, first moment of asking for help, I just knew I was done. Anyway, she starts putting loads of things into place, like barriers in my way, basically. You got to do X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, well, I ain't doing that. I'm working. I'm using loads. I'm just not going to attend your groups. Then you've got to go in front of a panel to go to residential rehab. And so, all right, so even if I manage to do all this, there's no guarantee. Then I said to her, I'd like Yvonne involved in this because I knew she got people into rehab and she had connections, you know what I mean? So she's put barriers in the way of that. Anyway, so the next day I went down to see Yvonne and I'm breaking down in tears. I was in bits and she's laughing, she's smiling. I'm like, what the fuck are you laughing and smiling at, Dave? Yvonne, sorry. And she's like, I just knew if you got to this point, Dave, you get it, right? So anyway, so we went through the process of contacting the rehab, going through their admission process. So that was at the back end of 2016, start of 2017, okay? About 3 weeks later, a month after asking for help, I was in rehab. Luckily enough, you could get a charity bed then.
Was that the time that Will was talking about? Because we found that segment really profound, and actually, I've watched that quite a lot actually, where he says that 1 minute you were there, you were like two peas in a pod, and then you were gone.
Yeah,
and he didn't know what to do, and then he was waking up, still speaking to you.
Yeah,
you were still there. You were still part of his life and part of his conscience.
Yeah.
Was that part?
Yeah, so obviously, I went through, the assessment process and all that stuff. I had to make daily phone calls. And I remember it was a Friday. I'd finished work at half a day, right? I made my daily phone call at 12:30. Okay. I got a call back at 12:59. I remember it clearly. There's a bed available for you tomorrow. It was that quick a process, you know what I mean? And I was like, okay, well, this is fucking real all of a sudden, isn't it? You know what I mean? This is happening. So, yeah, I was there one day. I woke up the next day. Last time I used with my brother in the morning, went to school.
You were gone.
And then I was gone. Yeah, then I was gone. And then the next thing you know, I was in rehab. I woke up in rehab on the Sunday morning. Like, where the fuck am I? What have I done? You know what I mean? But I had enough. So along that process of being in rehab, like, I know my brother mentioned it about me blowing him up to my mum and dad, right? And I'm going to clear something up now. Well, the reason I blew you up to mum and dad is because I was fucking sick and tired of mum asking me every time I had a phone call with her for 6 weeks solid whether he was still using, right? I don't regret doing that.
We get that.
I went through a lot of torment though afterwards, I went through that misguided loyalty of I'm fucking with his shit, you know what I mean? It's none of my business. But the truth is, Charlie, I was sick of my mum asking me whether he was still using every time I had a phone call with her. And then one day I was like, yeah, he'll still be using. Don't ask me how much, but I don't know, but he'll still be using. I don't regret that decision. Even if it was based in a selfish base, you know what I mean, place. I don't regret it. Do it all again tomorrow. I would, because I see what's happened.
Absolutely. When you, sorry to keep taking you back here, when you woke up the next day, did you have the realisation that you left your brother? The reason I'm bringing it up because you were really, really close, or did you just want out, or was it that quick? There was no more realisation, I'm going, and then you woke up the morning. When did you realise that my will had been left?
Truthfully, Charlie, and I'm going to stand in my truth now, I didn't have that. I just knew I was at my rock bottom.
Yeah,
I needed to change.
Completely.
And I just knew that I was going to die.
Yeah.
That's all I knew, Selfishly, whether it's selfishly, I don't know. My brother wasn't a thought.
No.
My brother wasn't a thought.
Selfish at all.
He wasn't a thought.
No.
I just knew. And then he became a thought.
Yeah.
You know, like I remember the times of leaving rehab. One of the most profound things I got told in rehab, right? And it's going to sound really silly, but somebody I'd used with was working in the treatment centre, and I'd had a particularly hard day, and I wanted to trap, and I wanted to leave. I'd given up my flat, and he sat with me on the bench, and I'm telling him I want to go, and I want to, you know what I mean, I want to fuck off. And he just goes, "Where the fuck are you going, Dave? To your brother's sofa?" He goes, how is that helping you or him? And in that moment, it's like, you know what? This isn't just about me. It's not just about me. You know, our relationship has been that codependent, and it turned that fucking toxic for either of us. Like, he was in the process of going into rehab at this point. For either of us to have a chance at getting a new way to live and a new life, we had to break that bond and reform and come back together and reform. You know what I mean? I'd had enough of shifted thinking, like 6 weeks away from drugs, to know I had to stay where I was. I couldn't just rock up on his doorstep, because I knew that would be just really fucking detrimental to the pair of us, you know. And the odds are we'd probably both be dead now.
Yeah.
And we're very lucky that both of us have survived.
First and foremost, you had to get well.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And by you getting well, it then leads Will to knowing his own self-worth, and also breaking the bonds of codependency, and like what you've had to do, to look where he is now.
Yeah, and you know what? I'm glad he had that stubbornness of, fucking, if my little brother's doing it, I can't be seen not to do anything. Yeah. You know what? Fair play to him. You know, even whatever brings you into recovery, isn't it? It's like,
if he can do it, I'm doing it. I'm not letting my little brother beat me there.
Absolutely. You know what? And I'm glad he had that. And I'm so glad. I'm so grateful he had that for himself. You know. But yeah, I wouldn't change it. I'd do it all again tomorrow. Charlie, is my truth. I'd throw him under the bus 1,000 times, because I know the rewards. I've seen the rewards. You know what I mean? For me, him, and my family. You know. Now, I know if I get nothing else in life, right, I am happy with what I've got, because I've got more than I ever thought I deserved. But it's not about me. I know tonight my mum and dad go to bed with peace of mind. You know, they're not one of the most shameful things I've ever heard, right? So I was just off my last detox. My mum and dad dropped me off to rehab. Then they went off to Gambia for a month. So I'd done my detox, and they came up to visit me. And it was just me and my mum sitting in the garden. So it would have been March, April time in 2017. And that summer was really hot, quite early on. And I'm sitting there in the sunshine, right? And my mum turns around to me and says, "David, I'm too scared to answer my own front door." And flippantly and sarcastically, I said, "Well, stop ordering so much online then, Mum." Right? And then I looked at her eyes, and I could see the damage that had been done. You know. And I thought, that's unwarranted. Like, my family, my mum and dad, my sister, they paid a heavier price than me. I got tired. I got to suppress. I got to avoid. I got to distract. I had a crutch for all my emotions. I had a crutch. You know, I got to hide away in a world of drugs and forget. They didn't. They lived with it day in, day out, 24/7. Just waiting for that knock at the door. And that's unfair. That is unfair. You know.
Let me take you back to the little boy that was looking out the classroom window. What did he see out the classroom window? What did he see, and what can you see now?
He saw somebody who was, you know, what he saw was fantasy that was better than his reality. That's what he saw now. What I see today, my fantasy never gets fucking met. My reality today is sound. My reality is, it's okay to be in my reality. My reality is, I'm content with life. You know, I have wonderful relationships with my family. My nephews have never seen either of us use. Beautiful.
Isn't that beautiful?
I've never
Isn't
had to
that
steal
beautiful?
off my nephews. I'm trusted with my nephews. I have a wonderful partner who understands, you know. She's not in recovery, but she understands the importance of recovery. You know, she allows me to be me, you know, dickhead and all.
What's and all.
Every part of me, Charlie, every part of me, you know, whatever that might be on any given day.
I've got 3 questions to end.
Okay.
What would you say to Will? What would you say to your brother now? If this is a chance, what would you say to him?
First thing that pops into mind is I'm sorry. But those amends have been made. Simply I'm proud of you. I love you. Yeah, that's simple.
Mm. What's a day in a life like in your life?
Day of my life. It's fairly simple, Charlie, truthfully. You know, I go to work, I study. I'd like to spend more time with my partner, but I don't get that chance because of studying, but I know that's not going to last forever. Day of my life is generally contented. You know, I'm happy with what I've got. I'm not running amok, I'm not causing carnage, you know. I'm paying taxes, go to work, I study.
Paying taxes? What are you doing?
I know, what the fuck, man, what the fuck
are you doing?
I'm not a big capitalist, but unfortunately it's what I signed up for, Charlie, innit, when I got right, they didn't tell me that bit when I got
far too much information. Too much information.
Listen,
this isn't the podcast for that.
Yeah. But that's what I signed up for when I got clean. They didn't tell me that.
Yeah.
They just told me a life behind your wildest dreams. You know what? Truthfully, I'm at peace. For long periods of time, I'm at peace. My head is quiet. I don't believe those things about myself anymore on every given day. You know, any given day, I can still fall into that trap of the negative self-belief, but for the most part, I know I'm capable. I know I'm deserving. I know I'm worth it.
Tell me, third question, what would you say to Dave of the past?
Oh, that's a tough one. Don't pick up heroin. That's a tough one, Charlie.
Just take your time.
What would I say to Dave of the past? It's okay. It's okay. It's going to be all good. You're okay. You're all right. You know, you're all right. That's a tough one. That's a tough one. I guess simply you are enough. You are enough.
Dave, thanks very much for this incredible interview. You have took us on a roller coaster of emotions. And could you just tell us what you're studying again?
So I am just about to embark on the 16th of September into my second year Masters in Integrative Counselling and Psychotherapy. On my way to being a doctor, hopefully, either psychotherapy or counselling psychology. I'm not quite sure which one yet. But yeah, so from a smackhead to studying a Masters in the space of 7.5 years.
And that there, what you just said there, is why we produce Unfiltered Lives at the other side. Stories like yours, and to show people in recovery or people that are still out there that there is a way out. And don't even ask me to repeat what you've just said. There is studying as someone with a stammer. The solution is in front of the camera. Dave, thanks very much for this absolute tremendous interview. It will stay with us for a long time. Thank you ever so much.
It's been my pleasure.
Give us a
you.
hug. Cheers, brother.
Nice one, fella.